one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call a roll?
Mr. Dakota?
Here.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Hoey?
Here.
Mayor Kennedy?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
7 present.
The first item before us is the approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, June 20th, 2016 for acceptance. We have a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, under permission to enter, we have 3 contract ratifications. The chair would make a motion that we refer those to executive session at the conclusion of the meeting if there's no objection. Second by Mr. Gendron. Discussion on that. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. And we have one more permission to enter for August 17, 2016. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve by Mr. Hoey, second by Ms. Doherty. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mr.
Yes.
Gignac?
Yes.
You started it.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas. Passes.
Next on memorials, we have a memorial for Dan Leahy, former state senator and city councilor and father of Kathleen Ramirez, who's a Greenhouse school teacher. Could we dim the lights? Next, we have, under public participation, we have Elise Connaughton, who asked to speak on agenda item 2016-315.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor,
Chairman.
Ms. Connaughton, if you don't mind, she's going to speak on my subcommittee report. So do you mind if I preface Ms. Connaughton's remarks with my report?
I don't mind at all.
Is that okay with you?
That's fine with
you
me.
up. I'll tee you up nice.
That's great. I'm just going to read, so you're good.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to subcommittee reports. The first subcommittee report of the evening is from the Facilities Subcommittee, a report on the meeting of Thursday, August 11, 2016. Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had the Facility Subcommittee meeting, as you mentioned, on August 11th. It was a great meeting. We had present myself and members, Mr. Gignac and Mr. Hoey. Also, school committee member Connie Martin joined us. We had Mr. Frisch, Mr. Underwood present, as well as Michael McGovern, the assistant city manager, and representatives from Perkins Eastman, our new designer, our architect on the high school project, as well as our OPM Skanska. The first item on the agenda, however, was regarding renaming of the Butler School Auditorium. We were asked by Ms. Connaughton and several other members of the Butler School family to consider naming the auditorium there after Mary Alice Foley, who's a former teacher and administrator and volunteer at the Butler School. So I could read you the background on that, but I think it's probably best delivered by Ms. Connaughton, so I'd invite her to the mic now to give that piece.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Gendron. I'm going to read the rationale that was put together for the naming of the Butler Auditorium. This was written when I was the principal at the end of my term, just before I retired. So the tenses might be a little bit off, so if you can put up with the verbs, we'll be all right, okay? I just would like to have this on for the record. So, since 1992, the children of the Benjamin F. Butler Middle School have held a prominent place in the life of Mary Alice Foley, and Mary Alice Foley has held a prominent place in the lives of the students at the Benjamin F. Butler Middle School. In her leadership role as assistant principal and acting principal, Mary Alice worked to shape the ethos, values, principles, and beliefs that anchored the school community. Mary Alice guided the school community with the belief that all students can achieve at high levels, with the principles of fairness and justice, with values of respect, responsibility, and effort, and with a basic ethos that everyone matters and everyone contributes to the school community. Spending as many as 60 hours a week, working late into the night, Miss Foley made the middle school on Gorham Street her primary residence for the years she worked at the Butler. Though the office, the cafeteria, the classrooms, the library, the gymnasium, the schoolyard all hold the morphic resonance of her presence at the Butler Middle School, nowhere has been more special to Miss Foley than the school auditorium. Within a year of opening the new Benjamin F. Butler Middle School, Mary Alice, along with the other school department administrators, reestablished the Knowledge Bowl competition amongst Lowell's middle schools. The Butler Middle School auditorium became the home to the annual contest, and Miss Foley became the moderator, a position she held for almost 20 years. In the spring of 1992, Miss Foley established another tradition at the Butler Middle School. Recognizing the beauty of Cambodian folk and classical dance, Miss Foley worked with the Angkor Dance Troupe to hold an annual Cambodian New Year celebration in April. Each year, the dancers from the Angkor Dance Troupe worked after school with the Butler Middle School students to teach them the classical and folk dancers featured in that year's performance. For the past 22 years, I've lost my place here. Cambodian New Year celebrations performed on stage for the whole school. Every April for the past 23 years, the Butler Middle School auditorium has come alive with Cambodian music and dance performed by students from the Butler Middle School. It's not just students with Cambodian heritage that participate in the dance performance, but students from every heritage represented at the Butler Middle School. Cambodian New Year is a celebration of one culture by many cultures. Thanks to Miss Foley's commitment and dedication to the arts, this tradition continued this past year. The instrumental band program is another program that is near and dear to Miss Foley's heart. A musician herself, Miss Foley is often taken to the stage to practice with the instrumental band students. The Butler Middle School Instrumental Band program boasts a membership of up to 120 students. Ms. Foley's support for the band students includes tracking down instruments, coordinating with the LRTA to get a bus for Monday night band students, making sure that the music keeps playing at the Butler Middle School. The school auditorium has been a place for our students to shine and for community members to enjoy in no small way because Ms. Foley made sure it was clean, cared for, and utilized well. For many years, there was a sign on the auditorium door that said the following: absolutely no food or drink in the auditorium, Miss Foley. Mary Alice Foley put her name on the value of keeping our auditorium a wonderful working space. She put her life to the work of 43 years in teaching Lowell's children in the Lowell Public Schools. We respectfully request that the Benjamin F. Butler Middle School auditorium bear the name of the woman who made it a place for children to thrive, Mary Alice Foley. Thank you for taking the few minutes and letting me speak to this. We really appreciate it, and on behalf of everyone at the Butler Middle School, thank you for your consideration of this request.
Thank you.
I want to thank Ms. Connaughton for coming out of retirement and coming down here to push this. I know this is a request that's been floating around for probably more than a year now, and she has been staunch in her efforts to make it so. So there was a motion after that by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Hoey, and approved by the entire subcommittee that we go forward and name the auditorium in honor of Ms. Foley. And I would like to offer that to the full committee at this time, Mr. Mayor, if that's appropriate.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Mr. Gignac, to approve the dedication. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy? Yes. Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
And Mr. Superintendent, it was also discussed, not in the form of a motion at the meeting, that perhaps we should put together some type of a small ceremony at the Butler School and invite Ms. Foley, obviously, and the other supporters of this idea down there and put together a plaque or something so we can honor her appropriately. Great. The second item on the agenda was the first of our quarterly updates from our owner's project manager, Skanska, and our architect, Perkins Eastman, on the new high school project. This is a project that is now gaining steam. This is, as everybody here knows, is the biggest school building project in the state of Massachusetts ever in the history of Massachusetts, and it's the biggest building project ever in the city of Lowell. So starting to gain steam. We're going to meet at least quarterly with these groups in the facilities subcommittee and report here to the main school committee. And in subsequent meetings, we intend to bring the architect here so that they can all meet the entire committee. But the purpose of this meeting was mainly to introduce the architect to the subcommittee, also get a status of the project and a timeline. If you guys look in your Dropbox, you will see the presentation that Perkins Eastman delivered to us. It's a very introductory presentation that talks about their background and talks about their vision of Lowell, nothing specific, but just some ideas they have about how they intend to move forward here. And I will point out that one of the key items in their approval as the next architect, in my opinion, was they were the only of the applicants for the architect position that really focused on cost cutting. And if you look at that presentation, they talk about how they regularly come in at or under budget on other projects, that school building projects they've done around the state. So I think that was very important and important to the MSBA. Yet the work that they have shown us has been fantastic. You know, the buildings that they have done and the projects they have worked on are all been top-notch, first class. So we're looking forward to a first-class high school in the years to come at or under budget. So I think that's the point that they made. The other thing is they highlighted their experience with phased projects. So if we end up with a phased project here, I think they were, of all the applicants, the one that showed the most experience in keeping a school running while building around it. And if that happens, it is the situation that we end up here in Lowell, they will be an architect that is prepared to get that done. I'll call your attention to the timeline, this 11 by 17 sheet that was placed on your desk. It's highly detailed. This was developed by Skanska, and Marianne Williams is here tonight to talk a little bit about it, but I'll just bring out a couple of key points that were important to me in the discussion of this timeline. First is that on May 31st of next year, of 2017, there is a MSBA, Mass School Building Authority meeting, at which time we will have to put forth what we think is the recommended project. So we will have to have some detail about the site, about the type of building and the type of construction we want by May 31st of 2017. That means that's sooner than I thought, actually. So that means we'll need to get busy in the next several months. Between now and the end of this year, there will be lots of investigation and discussion done by our architect, and there will have to be community outreach during that period so that we can get feedback from the citizens of Lowell about what their thoughts are about the entire project. But the timeline is short, and the decisions are going to be made in the next 6 to 9 months about what we're going to recommend to the MSBA as our recommended project. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask Ms. Williams to come to the mic and just kind of give a quick update on the status and timeline and see if the board has any questions for her.
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't know if folks have had a chance to review the timeline, if there were any questions, but I'm happy to give a higher level overview of what the process is. Now that we have a design team engaged and on board, we're in the process of putting together what's called a preliminary design program. And what that program does is that we look at the existing conditions of the high school. We document, do a complete analysis, look at the pros and cons of that, and then we will also put a cost estimate to that to say, what would it cost to do a base repair project for the high school as it is today? And then we'll look at several other options. We'll look at a renovation option, which is a little bit different than a repair option. It's more intrusive, more invasive, and really starts to get into structural issues in the building. So at a higher level, we'll look at a new option. It could be one or more sites. It could be a spot on the existing site, which I'm not sure where that would be without doing demolition. We would also look at renovation and a renovation addition option. So in that group of preliminary designs, we'll really look at cost impact, pros and cons, how each of the proposed preliminary designs support the educational plan and the goals of the community. We'll, as part of us understanding what that should look like, we've been engaged with the leadership of the high school in working with them and putting together an educational plan that reflects the practices and how the school is used. Additionally, we'll be putting together, for lack of a better term, it's called a think tank. They're visioning sessions where we will engage members of the community, educators, students, and members of the city. And out of that process and practice, we will have a really good idea of what makes the sense, how do we fulfill on your goals as a city, as a community, as a school for 21st century education. So the first submission to the Mass School Building Authority is what they call the preliminary design program. That will be all of those options. And in that submission, we'll state what the district's preference is to say, out of all those options, is 3 would like to study a little further. And 1 still would have to be a new option, a renovation option, and a reno addition option. Moving on to the next step, with approval from the Mass School Building Authority, we would then review, do more design work, more analysis, and put together what they called a preferred schematic report. That preferred schematic report has 3 options that are vetted much more deeply, and with that submission, there would be a recommendation about what that preferred option would be. And with that preferred option, with permission of the Mass School Building Authority, that permission would be granted at the May 31st, 2017 Mass School Building Authority meeting. We would then start what they call schematic design, where you have that one preferred option, and we really look at it. We advance the design to about 25% completion, so that when we put together a budget, a project scope and budget, so we're saying this is the schedule, this is the cost, and this is the scope. And when we complete that report, you want to be able to take that report to the bank, literally, that whatever we say it's going to cost, it's going to stand the test of time through the design period, through the construction period, through the closeout of the project, and which is really critical. And so that's really higher level what the next year and a half of work is going to be for this group, for all of us.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to comment that it was a great meeting, and I think it was very informative. And one of the items that I got from the meeting was that we're ahead of schedule, and I think that's due to the partnership from the school department and the city. And one of my questions at the subcommittee meeting was, are we going to be going out to the community and having informational sessions? And that is going to happen. The city is going to coordinate with the superintendent and different neighborhood groups to talk about the process and talk about the different options, and I think that's very important. And this is the largest, Mr. Gendron has mentioned this a few times, this is the largest school building project that the Commonwealth has ever seen. And you could tell by, in the meeting, there's a project manager on each side of the canal. So that shows you the scope of the size of this project, and it was a very impressive presentation. I look forward to the progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Ron. I just had a comment and a quick question. I think it's very exciting, and it's a very complicated issue, and it's very reassuring to hear all the different pieces in place and knowing that you're going to do due diligence. And I love that you're Your firm has a reputation for coming in under budget. We love that. My question is, I didn't see in the materials any, and maybe it's too early on to be thinking about this, but I just wanted to put it out there in terms of when we're actually doing the construction and the planning for the buildings, what priority, is there a priority around sustainability and, planning for solar panels or, those aspects that really make a building environmentally friendly and continue to save, as you go forward. I want to address that.
Through the mayor to the school committee, that is definitely part of every project with the Mass School Building Authority. There's an opportunity and a mandatory requirement that whatever project is selected that we achieve LEED Silver. And what will happen there is by doing that, you qualify for 2 additional discretionary percentages points for reimbursement. So it really translates into real money. So I'm just making up an example, but if you had a $100 million project and you accomplished that 2%, you're looking at $2 million. So I mean, it's significant money, and it's a wonderful incentive.
Started, is it anything else? Okay.
And, Mr. Mayor, I would point out that we do have a member on this, oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Dakota?
Just in response to Ms. Doherty, we do have a member on the school building committee that is from the sustainability committee. Just wanted to let you know.
I think she already knew that. Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is really for Mr. Gendron. I know that we, as a school committee, had asked the head of school to project out what their needs would be for the next 20 to 30 years, which is kind of a hard thing to do, but to kind of project what they're going to need with the shorter time frame here that we're talking about. Do you suppose that are they aware of this shorter time frame, and hopefully they can get that together for us?
So I guess I'll defer to Ms. Williams on that, but I just do want to point out that it's really not a shorter time frame. I was a little surprised at how quickly that date was coming up, but nobody else was.
Okay.
So it's really not a shortened time frame.
Okay.
But I'll ask Ms. Williams to comment on that.
Through the mayor, Mr. Mayor, to the school committee, we had anticipated that this would be a very quick-paced project in the sense of not that we're rushing through, because we want to have sufficient time to really do the appropriate analysis. But what we're looking at is being efficient in what we do here. So as soon as I actually do not work for the design team, I work as the owner's project manager for Skanska. And so in my role, it's my responsibility to make sure that everything gets orchestrated appropriately, that we're fulfilling all of the requirements. And so how that translates is in the very beginning, as soon as a contract was executed, I had met with the headmaster and the principal and a couple of folks from the school, and actually sat down with them and talked about what an educational plan was, gave them examples of educational plans that were developed from other projects, renovation projects, comprehensive high schools, et cetera. And then we were able to guide them to say, if you look at Module 3, it lays it out very nicely what the Mass School Building Authority is looking for. As a result of that, they actually wrote what I think was a very good draft of an educational plan. And when I say draft, it's going to continue to evolve as we get into more conversations with folks. But I think they've really set out a very good criteria about the practices in the school, what are the goals are, how the building is used. And then as we move forward and go into what they call visioning sessions, there'll be an opportunity to have this larger group of about 40 to 50 people who will be brainstorming and thinking about what you want your school to look like. That will help inform them to come away from that meeting and say, okay, we want to tweak our educational plan because we've learned something here, from the benefit of all the feedback that they get from the community, the city, the educators, students, et cetera. And then that will become that will actually be the foundation of what they call the basis of design. That will inform what the building practices will be, and that will inform us about what the building should look like. Okay.
All set. Any further discussion? Mr. Gendron, is that,
That's it. Submit that as a report of progress.
okay. All right, so we have a motion to accept the report as a report of progress, second by Mr. Hoey. Any further discussion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next is a subcommittee report for the Finance Subcommittee, report on the meeting of Wednesday, August 17th, 2016. Mr. Gignac, did you want to wait until the next meeting on that?
Yes,
or-
if we could just
Okay.
defer that to the first meeting in September.
Okay. All right, so if we can, it's on the agenda tonight. We'll take a motion by Mr. Gignac to delay action on this until the next meeting, second by Ms. Martin. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. If there is no objection, we do have another speaker that would like to speak for a couple of minutes. It would be under suspension of the rules by general consent, and it's Sandy McNamara on the National Night Out, so.
Squeaking, sorry. Hello, everybody. My name's Sandy McNamara. I am president of Centerville Community Coalition and also chairperson of National Night Out. I'm here tonight because of the last 3 years, I've had no luck with involving the school department. As hard as I've tried, I was almost sure that my granddaughter was in Green Elge and played how it all started, played the violin. And she was such a person and convinced her teacher that this would be the best thing in the world for them to perform National Night Out. And they did. And we got great reviews. People just come up to us and would say, I never knew they did that in school, I never knew. And then we come to the next year. Julie's no longer in the Green Out, she's in the Robertson. So now she's in chorus and a bunch of other things and convinces those teachers that they need to do a performance. Unfortunately, last minute, the teacher was unable to attend, but the girls still put on their performance with their shirts showing, same with Greenfield, where they're from. And I thought that was the greatest thing because, again, we have different people coming up to us, or elderly people just sitting, listening to watch what these young kids were doing in their performances and how excited they were about what they were doing. But let me go back a little bit. For those who do not know what National Night Out is, National Night Out is an organization that happens throughout the whole United States. Each town, city do whatever they want to do. They can do it or they don't do it. Lowell, we do it very big. And again, National Night Out is about bringing, it's more educational based. We try with opioids and crime. Police department works very hard with us as well. And it's everybody in the world you can think of. It's businesses, it's police, it's fire, it's the ambulance companies. Everybody in the world I can think of, I try to be productive with bringing them all together, which we have been, very productive. And again, I've reached out many times to the school department to make the little bit of effort I need from them. First of all, I start in May. I send a letter out to the school department. I send one the end of May, just like, hey, hello, here we are. And I also send one a couple of weeks before school lets out, because I do ask the school department if I can pass flyers to send home to all the children. School department has come halfway with me, and what I do is I deliver all the paper to them free, and they print them, and we send them out. And then I also, through the school department, is told that if we wanted to do this summer call-out, we needed to be sure the principals were okay with it. When I bring the paper to the school, I show them the okay through the school department that we're okay to do this, and they're happy with that. So then now we wait and wait. Here it is, the summer school's got out. A lot of the kids have gotten their letters, a lot have not. But the school call-out is the most important thing to all. For those people who might have went away or not went away, or for many reasons, forget that National Night Out is coming. We try our hardest to get as much information out as possible through City Life, through LTC. We I really try to promote as much as I can. This year, I thought for sure the last effort was the school summer call-out. That's what I call it. That's what I put on the notice I give to the principals. You guys might call it something different. This year, up until the day before, I didn't have any luck. Parents were saying, San, nobody called us, blah, blah, blah. I then brought it to a couple of different people, their attention, and to where I was guaranteed through the superintendent that school call-out would happen. It never did. So on that note, I'm here not to complain, but I'm here to tell me how I can better plan or educate with the Lowell schools. I'm like beneath myself. For the 4th year in a row, I don't know what else to do. And if I can have help in that, just tell me what I've done wrong or what I can do right to be sure come next May, I'm sending out notifications. Do I have to send one? And then also the mayor's office and manager's office send out different notifications as well of the event. Tell me what else I can do. Or if I've done something wrong, or help me through this. I mean, the kids are the important factor in my eyes to educate. For every vendor that we have at the event, they're instructed to bring some kind of trinket. Like, for instance, Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, we gave out bracelets, balloons, tattoos, all pertaining to National Night Out with information. I mean, the kids walk away with Board of Health, they give out tons of different things, but for ambulance would be, it's opioids and the number on it. So every vendor is, as well as instructing the parents on kind of help with maybe a child with opiate abuse or with Alva, it gives them the information and the tool to go forward to help them and their families, especially kids with abused homes. We have many of that. Summer programs, we try to keep them active. I do personally refer a lot of the problem kids I see. I live near 2 schools, St. Louis and Greenelm. I'm boxed in. So education in those backgrounds, I think, is not out there enough. And again, we're trying our best with that one night to do whatever we can. I take personally a few of the problem children and put them on our staff for the night of to watch. For instance, last year we had a problem with kids more than happy to take the balloons but want the helium. We had a couple of the small staffers that came to us and said, they're all trying to suck in that helium, Mrs. McNamara. And I goes, okay, you guys know the importance of that is, I explained in a meeting, just takes the wrong deep breath and you blow out your lungs. That's fact. So we stopped the kids before, God forbid anything happened. But it was nice to have those little tools to see something we wouldn't have seen. And they weren't problem children for 2 weeks before, because their other thing was their parents had to keep us informed if they were behaving or misbehaving. That was a part of the education for the problem few we knew of. And again, I want to make it stronger. I know you were there this year, and I just need the right direction. If I'm doing something wrong, if I'm doing something right, should I be a pain? Should I be calling every week? I don't know. Tell me.
Thank you, Ms. McNamara. The chair would suggest a motion that your request be referred to the superintendent in order that the superintendent could develop a plan for National Night Out. We have a motion to that effect by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Any discussion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted.
Awesome.
Should be as easy as that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have a report. Yes. Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted
Mr.
to,
Superintendent.
yeah, I just wanted to refer to the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, because that's where it resides, with the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, activities like this.
I did not receive any information relative to the request. It never came through to my office. But I do know that, I just wanted to let the school committee know that the student support service staff were on site at each of the sites that night. And they participated in launching the attendance awareness campaign, where all children signed pledges that they would attend school and be in school on every day. And they came back very, very excited about that participation. So I do just want the committee to know that the Lowell Public School has participated and plans on continuing to participate.
Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, if I may add to that, an advice to the best way that we can help you in this is to go through the student services, because this falls under activities. Outside falls under student services. Mrs. Durkin you see her now. She's the person to contact. I think what I know is that your flyer had come in, and I had approved it, and it went through all the schools way back then, and then I had no knowledge whatsoever of any what you're calling call out with the school messenger that we do, until a school committee member called me up. I had no knowledge of it at all, and and that was the day before, in the summer when half of our staff is on vacation. So I did give the direction to proceed with it, and I didn't know what happened after that. Obviously, I don't make them myself, but I think in the future, if we want to better serve you to succeed better in this, is really to communicate with the student services, because apparently you're dealing with all the district, not just one school. So going through just one principal may not serve you best. So go to Mrs. Durkin, and I'm sure we'll be able to help you better. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have reports of the superintendent. We have 11 reports of the superintendent this evening. Rather than to take a vote on each one, the chair would suggest that we go through each of the reports and then take one motion to accept them as reports of progress. The exceptions to that being item 16 and item 21, which I think require roll call votes. If there's no objection, that's how we'll proceed. Hearing no objection, the first item is the Doors Open Lowell Public Schools. Any discussion on that? Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question. When these tours are going on in the individual schools, who is guiding these people?
Okay. Yes, I'd like to call.
Superintendent.
Thank you. I'd like to call Ms. Sanchi, and she'll give you some explanations.
Hi. Good evening.
Hi.
I think the documentation is self-explanatory, but if you had a particular question, I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. My question was, who is actually putting on the tour? Who's guiding these individuals to the school buildings?
Okay, so the superintendent and I are working on this initiative along with John Dakota, who is planning transportation for us for these events. And this is an effort to have community members more involved in decision-making in our schools, seeing our facilities, and just having more information about what's going on in the schools. So one particular visitation session might include a look at facilities. The next one may include looking at teaching and learning, a variety of topics.
Okay, so you'll rotate different, okay.
Yes.
All right, I was just curious if it was the principals or if it was somebody from...
The principals are involved. They all have the schedule. They know when their school is being visited by community members, and they're all in contact with me so that we can prepare for the date of their visit.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a comment. I think that it's a great idea to really, be out in the different schools and welcoming members. I'm just surprised by the time. I'd like to, are you planning to do follow-up reports to let us know what your attendance is? Because it's mornings, right? Like immediately I thought, oh, I'd love to go. That sounds fantastic. But it's a Wednesday morning, so
Yes,
it's
so
a work
they're-
day for many people.
Yes, they're Wednesdays, 10 to 12, the first Wednesday of every month. However, as you know, you can always visit our schools by just calling the superintendent's office or anyone in the central office. This was really a date that we had to fit into all of our other meetings and schedules. And this does not take place of the superintendent's regular observation sessions. This is in addition to that so that community members can be involved.
So I guess I'm just saying I'd love to get feedback, how they go. Just not a lengthy thing, but just,
Sure, we can provide a regular report.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Not a lot of work, just a little thing. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Dakota?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second that as well. I think it's a great idea, and hopefully the parents and whatever staff, any of the school committee members can participate in that. It's a great idea. I think the Lowell Public School is really the best-kept secret. People don't know about it, and I think it's any way that we can get that knowledge out there, it's to our benefit.
Great. I just want to add that Enterprise Bank is advertising in their local branches. The Chamber of Commerce has advertised to all their membership and the Lowell Plan as well. So I want to thank those organizations for doing that.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. Just a small point. I know we have a standing policy that all of our promotional materials bear the seal of the Lowell Public Schools. So if that could just be incorporated into the flyer, that would be great, just as kind of an imprimatur of, I guess, authenticity, so that all of our publications have that same insignia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Mr. Superintendent? I thought you had your hand up. Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion on item 10, we'll move on to item 11. And item 11 comes with, I think, either a PowerPoint presentation or a movie. It's Food and Nutrition Department Year in Review.
We're just going to need to turn that TV a little bit. Thank you, Janine. Put you to work. Okay. I'd like to thank the mayor for finding the key to the TV box so that we could do our PowerPoint. We also have a couple of small snippets of video that we were really looking forward to share, because that tells a bigger story when you can actually see it versus a PowerPoint or in a document. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Sharon Lagasse. This is Christina Weber. We represent the Lowell Public Schools Food and Nutrition Department, and we graciously thank you for this opportunity to share a year in review with you. So without further ado, your packages I left at your seats today. We also left you a little surprise with an apron with a direction that we're going in, and Christina will share more about our new department. But first, we're going to start off with what happened in the year 2015-16 was we entered into community eligibility provision starting in August of 2015. What this really did was took away all the free and reduced application process, it almost eliminated all the paperwork that we needed to do, freed up a lot of time at the schools, which allowed us to really enable putting in enhanced programs in our schools. So we got the news a couple of days before the start of school. We pulled the plug and we jumped right in, and we were able to really kick in and do some wonderful enhancements to the food nutrition program above and beyond feeding the kids. This is working wonderful. I'm so excited. Last year was our pilot year. We're working into, this will be our second year in a 4-year provision that we're working through. And one of the biggest things that we wanted to share tonight is just about the program enhancements, and Christina's going to take you through those.
Great. So one of the benefits of running the CEP operation here for Lowell Public Schools is sourcing some locally grown produce. So we have worked with this organization called Farm Logics to help us with our procurement. So over the course of the school year, we were able to bring in a variety of locally grown crops. Some of them being sweet potatoes, carrots, corn, green beans, cucumbers, zucchini. There's a ton up on that slide. Here is a very small graph, so I apologize for the size of this, but it showcases that we've sourced just under 50,000 pounds of locally grown produce since the start of school year 15-16. And here are some of the marketing materials they have. So these are wonderful. We like to hang them up through all of the schools. The benefit of these is to showcase some of the produce that the kids have been able to try, and also to highlight the farmers where these products come from. Harvest of the Month is another program that we've been able to run this past school year. It is wonderful in regards to being able to offer samples to all of our students. So if there's a new crop that a student may not be familiar with, it's a possibility that they may try it after they have the sample. And it's also a different way to showcase different variety of recipes that we have. So we started this program at a middle school, an elementary school, and a high school. And after we saw great success with the students and wonderful feedback, we were able to spread it throughout all elementary schools since the end of the school year. Here's just a few pictures of some of the things that we were able to do with this. So there's a different crop highlighted every month for the Harvest of the Month program. One of the months was kale chips, and they were actually a really big hit. So we've been able to incorporate a little bit of nutrition education after we hand out these samples kind of in the cafeteria with the students. I'm hoping this video works. Here is a montage video of students being able to sample some produce at the McAuliffe School. Might be loading, perhaps. All right, maybe we will come back to this. I'm not sure if we're limited on time.
Oh, is it just, oh, it's feeding. You can keep talking.
We also have another video later on in this slide that shows our food bank, our school-based pantry that we run at the STEM Academy. It's been able to show all the wonderful things that we do. We have a lot of high school students come and support us at this school-based pantry at the STEM Academy. All right, so we'll move forward just a tad as this loads. In addition to our locally grown produce that we've been able to support, we have had some nutrition education that we've been able to bring into the classroom. So these wonderful aprons that we have some models sitting in our audience here. The point of these is to sort of rebrand ourselves as nutrition educators. So not only just trying to feed our students healthy, lovely, nourishing meals, but also educate them in regards to what makes a well-balanced meal. So this was our pilot year with our nutrition education in the classrooms. We started at the McAuliffe and the Morey School. We were able to come into either the class or the cafeteria, have some food demos going on, have the kids really involved in helping with this prep, and then being able to talk about some wellness and nutrition. Still loading. Some additional program enhancements that are highlighted in your deck that you have are new variety of menu choices. We have some more grab-and-go, fresh, healthy sandwiches and salads that we've been able to offer at all grade levels. Communication has been a key focus throughout the district as we have started the school year. We have changed our website where we can provide nutritionals and information and calorie requirements in regards to some of the menu choices that we've had. And we've been also able to have a newsletter that's sent out district-wide to highlight some of the things that we've been doing, making sure that people are getting involved. We are in the process of working on another website specific to Farm to School that highlights the different farmers and the produce that we are getting. So that should be up and running in about a couple of weeks.
See? No. Can you? No. Okay.
All right.
Oh, we'll just move forward. We're going to move
Sorry
forward.
about that. If we can show them at a later date, we would love to.
Sorry. School-based pantry show? No. Okay, so we will save the lovely videos for another day. We're happy that we got the PowerPoint up. So we wanted to just take an opportunity to share the progress that the department has made over the past 6 years in regards to certain key metrics that we've always maintained throughout our tenure here. And so the first screen is in regards to total meals served. And so as you can see, we started in the summer of 2009 and 2010. We were serving 2.52 million meals for that first school year. Since we've started here, we're serving close to a million more meals per year since the 6 years that we have been managing the food and nutrition department. That's come with a lot of new programs that we've increased, a lot of marketing, a lot of education, a lot of tools and resources that we've been able to bring to the district and been able to leverage, and really working individually school by school by school, especially putting in breakfast in the classroom. That's where we've seen the biggest impact for the growth. So we've seen a 38% increase in total meals in the last 6 years. The next slide is on breakfast participation. Through analysis, we still know that this is the biggest area of opportunity, is to feed kids in the morning. We've seen a 73% increase in breakfast meals served overall in the past 6 years. We had a 6% increase in breakfast meals with the inception of CEP. So we did see, but our participation is so high anyways. Another district that might have had a lower participation might have seen a bigger bump with the community eligibility provision, but we had a very high participation rate prior to. So we anticipate more as we put in breakfast carts at the Butler and putting breakfast in the classroom at the Pine. So we know that these numbers will increase as we move into next year. So right now, last year we did 442 meals more per day than we did the prior year with CEP. Lunch participation is a 15% increase in lunch meals overall. Last year we did 960 more meals versus the prior year. Lunch, we have a very high participation. We're running around an 85% participation rate for our students in Lowell Public Schools. So we have very, very good participation for lunch. Still always the opportunity for breakfast. And then the next slide is financial impact. So just wanted to spend a couple of minutes and share where we were when we came in to Lowell Public School running in as a deficit. The Lowell Public Schools Food Nutrition Program has grown $1.4 million in profitability from 2009 to 2016. The department has contributed $4 million in overall revenue, and we've exceeded our guarantees by almost $1 million. So we're very proud not only of the financial impact, but the programmatic impact and just our engagement with the community and our engagement with the students and our interactions in Lowell Public Schools has been pretty phenomenal. So we're sorry again that we couldn't show our videos, but we'll share them for another night. So if anybody has any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Gendron, then Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for coming down. This is a great presentation, even without the videos. I'm sure that would have been great. But, and thank you for the apron. I can't wait to try that out when I get home. I just wanted to make a couple points. This is amazing. 3.5 million meals a year. I just did a quick calculation. We have 14,000 students. If every student has breakfast and lunch, that's a little over 5 million meals. Mm-hmm. So we're at 3.5 million meals in the district, which is amazing. And given the link between nutrition and education, clearly this is an important program. Throw into that it's profitable. We like that. So that's great. And I especially like the nutrition education part of it, where we can actually bring education on the food chain and so forth into the classroom. I think that's really important, especially for kids who come from Lowell, who may not get out to a farm or know what that's like. I had one question. Most of our schools have, many of our schools have Mill City Grows gardens now, where they grow vegetables. I'm wondering if you're able, do you ever utilize the crops that come out of those gardens, even though they're small? I wonder if the kids would get, if there'd be an interesting connection knowing that the food that they grow actually ends up in there.
Absolutely. We can't use them in the cafeterias, and that's really about food safety. So the most paramount thing above and beyond food nutrition and education and profitability is food safety. So in order for us to guarantee food safety is I need to know where the food came from, what chemicals were used, were hands washed, was every single piece of that supply chain is bar none the most important thing. So the only way that I can guarantee that is to buy through the vendors that are approved through us. So what we do is we encourage people to use them. You can use them in the classrooms. You can use them after schools. We can use them in a variety of different ways, but I cannot, for food safety reason, introduce them into the food chain supply.
Right, but I assume we're able to make the link, though.
Oh, we do make the link.
sure.
Oh,
That's like
yes,
the
the
kale
link,
that
the
For
link is
sure.
made, the link is made, but the product itself, it's not the same product. I can't interchange it just for food safety reasons, but we do make the connection, absolutely.
Thanks very
And we
much.
work really closely with Mill City Grows in regards to that connection as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one question about the school dish, and have you been able to track how many hits that you bump from
No.
people?
That's a great question. I'm sure we
Yeah.
can reach out to like our home base in regards to that,
Yeah.
but we haven't been able
It'd
to.
be good to know that. I think,
Definitely.
and I think it's a great thing to offer them, really, because there are some people, I'm sure, that have no idea what to do with kale.
Yeah.
Right, I know,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yes.
Good, we will,
Great
we
point,
will.
thank
We
you.
are working with John Overton, with the IT department in regards to getting some Facebook and a Twitter handle and all these other things so that we can direct people back to the website. So, because sometimes things get lost in a robust website. So if we can start connecting those dots and make it easy for somebody to click on something on a Facebook or a Twitter page, it'll bring them right back.
Good.
But we will get you those numbers
All right.
and we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 12. Item 12 is first book. Any discussion on item 12? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 13. Mr. Superintendent, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I did ask Amy Bisson to come in and present about this collaboration that we're entering into with First Book. I think it's a great thing for our students, and it'll be nice for the community to hear a few words on it.
Thanks.
Your permission.
I'm Amy Bisson. I'm a retired elementary school teacher from Lowell, and this is Mickey Dumont from UTL, and also a retiree.
Yes.
So we're here to share something really exciting that we're going to be able to do in Lowell called a First Book Drop. And First Book, first of all, is a national nonprofit. It was established in 1992, and the mission of First Book is to bring high-quality, brand-new, not used, books to programs and schools and families with children in need. In order to qualify for this program, a community or program has to have a 70% poverty rate, and we definitely qualify here in the Lowell Public Schools, so we're pretty excited that we'll be able to definitely bring the truck in. The collaboration between AFT Mass, UTL, and the Lowell Public Schools is also enhanced because we're reaching out to our community partners. We will have a 53-foot tractor trailer filled with 40,000 to 44,000 books that will be available to our families and our teachers and educators for absolutely no charge. Mr. McGraven over at STEM Academy has graciously offered up his space for us to do this. We're getting ready to pull the truck in. Hopefully it'll fit. We're looking to get 2,000 email addresses. Our membership is about 1,800. About 1,800. So we feel pretty comfortable that we can reach out and get the other 200. We would include all of our school committee members as well. Once you give an email address to First Book, that's what they're collecting. You get an occasional email with an offer to buy books. And as a fourth grade teacher and a third grade teacher, I often bought a lot of books. These books on the First Book Marketplace are offered at 50 and 90% off, which means we can do a lot and get a lot in our classrooms as well. So it's kind of a win-win for both staff and educators and families. The date that we have tentatively set is the book truck will pull up on October 21st, which is a Friday, and we will activate, I hope, 1 million volunteers to help us offload all those books. We will be sorting books, and on the 22nd, which is a Saturday, we will open the doors and be giving away 40 to 44,000 books.
And we'd really like to see every one of you there on Friday, October 21st, to help us unload the truck. And then on Saturday, October 22nd, to help us disseminate the 40 to 45,000 books. You have brand-new aprons you're welcome to wear. I'm sorry? Oh, maybe we could have
Kale
some food.
chips.
Kale chips. But really, we need all the help we can get, and we're very grateful to Superintendent Kelfawi and
For his
UTL
support.
President Paul Georges, and also Principal Jason McCreven for his graciousness in opening up his schools to this endeavor. It's huge. Yes, Mr. Dakota?
Mrs. Dumont, you might want to contact the ROTC at the high school because they're always looking for volunteer hours.
Good idea.
And so there'd be a huge staff to work with.
Oh, terrific.
Terrific.
We'll see you there, right, Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota, Amy and I all taught together at the Bailey School many years ago, so we'll see you there.
We'll save you a spot.
Any other questions?
Any further discussion?
Okay,
Hearing
thank
none,
you.
thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next is the purchase orders report. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, I would ask Mr. Gary Frisch.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The report was requested at the last school committee meeting. The report is in the board packet. It's 3 pages, lists all the purchase orders from June 14th through July 5th. Out of the $2.5 million that was purchased during this time period, the bulk of the purchases, over close to $2 million, were due to technology, hardware, software licenses, repairs and maintenance, and furniture for the enrollment surge at the fifth grade. So, is there any questions that I may be able to answer?
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Frisch, for providing the report. I just have a question. So all of these purchase orders that were created on 6/30, that's for last fiscal year?
2015-16.
My question, the first thing that popped out to me was the Tsongas Center at UMass Lowell. Why would we prepay?
I believe that was for the graduation that just occurred.
So there was no purchase order prior?
Correct.
Okay, so it was like you're just paying for something that already occurred?
Yes, there's an invoice number attached here in the description.
Okay. Oh, I didn't notice that.
One almost, just to, because it's on the same line item. So there was the $19,000 payment, which I would assume would be for what we had approved long ago for the graduation. And then there was an additional payment of about $1,200?
Correct. And that invoice, it was invoice listed here. I don't have what that was for. But I can certainly get that for you.
All right, Mr. Gignac, you had the floor. Are you
I'm
all
good.
set?
Thanks. I'm good to go. Yep.
Okay. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. So just to follow up on a couple other questions, the workplace resource payment for about $69,000 I wasn't sure what that was for.
That was furniture for.
Was that for outfitting the kindergartens, the new kindergartens?
Outfitting the STEM Academy and the Wang.
Okay. And then the Whaley payment?
Yeah, that was carts for the student laptops.
Okay, so
Laptop
that's in line
carts.
with the Apple payments for the...
Correct.
Okay. My only other question would be, as Mr. Gignac had pointed out, so many of these that are happening 6:30, the ones that happen from 7/1 to 7/5, will they be treated differently?
We received permission to enter those within the 2015-16, for the 2015-16 school year. So those are part of the 2015-16 year-to-date budget.
Okay, so you're able to basically backdate them? And
Yes, that
permission
was
came
counted
from-
as towards encumbrances for 2015-16.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? So those represent encumbrances from FY
For
15-16?
2015-16. We got permission to enter those after June 30th, a few days after.
And you received that permission from?
The city auditor was in touch with the Department of Revenue. There was quite a discussion that went on over that, but the Department of Revenue thought that they were, that it was appropriate.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question on the Apple purchase. How many computers did we get?
1,500.
1,500 computers.
60 per school.
Okay.
2 laptop carts per school.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll move on to the budget summary. Mr. Superintendent.
Again, Mr. Frisch, if you may.
Okay, I'd be happy to talk about the budget summary for 2015-16 school year. The local budget, which means the funds received from the state and the city, total $158 million. In round numbers, the school district expended $156 million and has outstanding purchase orders of just shy of $2 million that are outstanding. The report we just went over was 2.5, and some of those were liquidated by the time of 8/17. This means, after subtracting the expenditures and the encumbrances from the total budget, that the Lowell Public Schools has expended less than budgeted, which is a good thing. In essence, the school department has lived within their means. In addition, it has been able to pay for employee contracts increases and retro amounts that were required as part of the contract settlements with 7 employee groups. At the same time, there were enough funds to pay for, as we just mentioned, 60 additional Apple laptop computers per school. This will help the district be in compliance for online testing, which is required by the fiscal year ending 2019, as well as providing more student access to technology. Later in this agenda, we will ask the school committee to approve budget and expenditure transfers that are reflected in part of this budget summary. The 2015-16 budget had employees listed with amounts from 2013-14, which is why the salary accounts were overspent as the salary increases were implemented per the bargain settlements. As the contracts were settled, then we implemented the new salary amounts, and then, of course, we had to retro that back to 2013-14. The budget transfers were needed to offset the employee salary accounts that were in deficit position, were surpluses from other accounts. The expenditure transfers were needed to adjust the administrative indirect cost and fringe benefit accounts that needed to be adjusted per the documentation attached as part of this report to support the food service reimbursements to the local funds. In another revolving fund, the circuit breaker account at June 30th, 2016 has in the amount $2.8 million, of which $548,000 exceeds the allowable carry-forward limit. So essentially, we're allowed to carry forward the amount of the reimbursements we received from the state, which amounted to $2.3 million. We had $2.8 million. As you know, we had 5 payments that were booked into 2015-16. The fourth quarter of 2015 was booked in 2015-16. The $548,000 will revert to the city's general fund when the city closes the books for the fiscal year 2015-16. In order to use these monies to replace the kindergarten grant, the city council would need to appropriate this money for 2016-17 as a supplemental appropriation. We asked the school committee to request from the city council to appropriate $527,642, which is the exact amount needed to pay for the kindergarten paraprofessionals. As you remember, at the last school committee meeting, I informed the school committee that we had lost the funding from the kindergarten grant, which was eliminated from the state budget. So we needed to find a way to be able to pay for those salaries and continue the excellent full-day kindergarten program. We asked the school committee, as I mentioned, to ask the city council to do that. As also we stated at the previous school committee meeting, we had an agreement at the end of June with the city manager to reserve up to $600,000 of funds to pay for these 17 paraprofessionals for the kindergarten grant. We knew we would have funds from the 2015-16 to support this amount. Additionally, we would like a motion to increase the school suspense budget by $527,642 as a supplemental appropriation to the 16-17 budget. So that is my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask the superintendent if he wanted to add any additional comments.
Do you have anything to add, Ms. Superintendent?
No, I'm fine. I'll be happy to entertain any questions if you have any questions.
Is there any discussion, Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Mr. Frisch, the superintendent, could provide us with the amount of continuing the paraprofessional positions for kindergarten, what figure is that?
527,642.
527,642. Okay. So you're asking the body to vote on something tonight, right? To bring before the city council?
Actually, 2 motions.
Okay.
One motion is to request city council appropriate additional funding for 2016-17. And the second motion to provide an additional supplemental appropriation for the school committee's budget for the same amount, $527,642. This would allow us to continue to provide the staffing to support the kindergarten grant program.
Okay. I'll make one motion first for you.
You want to make that motion, Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
So the motion would be to request that the city council increase the budget by $527,642 to pay for the kindergarten paraprofessionals.
Yes.
Do we have a second to the motion? Second by Mr. Hoey. Discussion on the motion? Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think I understand what we're doing here. We discussed it at the Finance Subcommittee previously as well. But one thing that's just not clear to me is, how did we just make an error thinking that, I mean, we have money, that $527,000 in the FY16 budget, and we need to spend it in FY17, which is why we're doing this kind of like little giving it to the city council, or the city council puts it into their general fund, and we're asking them to give it back to us. But how did we get to the point where we were budgeting for something in FY16 that we needed to spend in FY17? Am I missing something there?
Let me start, and then let me begin and then let the superintendent follow me. All right. So I'll start off with, we knew that we had the June 28th. I talked to the Mr. Superintendent, said, looks like we'll have about 600,000 left over at the end of 2015-16. And I said, we lost the kindergarten grant.
Okay.
We didn't know that until right around that time period. It was officially July 2nd. So we said, we have about 600,000. We need to reserve those funds from 15-16 and move them to 16-17 so that we can continue to make the payment on these paraprofessionals that were paid by the grant. So that's in essence, and so the mechanics, we were trying to work out the mechanics of exactly how to do that.
Right.
And there was been a back and forth, a lot of discussions.
Right, okay, now, I think I remember now. So that was, the Governor Baker, I think, cut the grant.
Yes.
So we lost the 527,000, and we needed to figure out how we were gonna fund these kindergarten paraprofessionals.
Right.
We saw that we had $600,000 left in the budget, and we said, we're trying to get creative and say maybe we can utilize that funding so that we can keep paraprofessionals in our kindergartens.
Right.
And so we're letting the city recoup the money, and we're asking them to give it back to us.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Sounds good, thank you.
Right.
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you again. I just want to make sure when this is presented to the city council, that it's clear that this is money that we didn't spend, that we're just asking for it back. It's not that we're asking for additional funds. I think that's very important that we're crystal clear on that.
No, but that was the understanding from day one, that this is not a request for additional funds.
Right.
This is just moving funds from one year to the next.
I just want to make sure when it's brought forward to the city council that it's clear to the public and to the council that that's the case, because the council has a lot more viewers than we do on Tuesday nights. So I want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
I was trying to help with those ratings.
Maybe in Chicago, I think we have quite a few views.
Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we'll make that very clear, and this is an agreement we've had. As soon as we heard that there is those funds, of the grant funds, are at risk, we brought this idea forward, and we're actually leaving on the table more than 527. As you know, it's over 540, but we're also leaving another $51,000 from our regular budget. So we're leaving on the table close to 600,000, but we're only asking for what we need to cover that. And you are absolutely correct. We're going to make sure that the Lowell Sun knows that exactly, that it is money that we're giving back, and we're asking them to give it back just to remain absolutely in compliance with the financial laws. Thank you.
I'll be at that city council meeting, Mr. Gignac. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. In light of this kind of approach that we're talking about moving forward to rescue these positions, can I ask, when we went through the budget process, we had a fairly, I think, impassioned conversation about when we were talking about mainly that spending around the technology spending that happened, that using one-time money for capital one-time expenses was extremely wise, and certainly we were counseled very strongly that using it for forward funding was not a good idea. So now we come to a point where we're intentionally where you're advocating for a structural deficit for us to move forward into the next year, knowing that this is in place. In the past, I've certainly supported that, so it's not, it's the action itself, I think, makes sense, and as it's laid out, I think it makes sense. But what changed your mind and why you're taking such a different approach at this point than 6 weeks ago?
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Superintendent.
Yeah, there is no change of mind. I didn't change my mind. I still believe that one-time payment, if you have the opportunity to plan way ahead, we were doing a budget. We were planning several months ahead to just go ahead and plan to have one-time payments. I think it's one thing, but I think in this case it's something that we were really caught by surprise by the governor cutting the funds at the very last minute. I think it wouldn't be very ethical for us to come at the mid-June mark to tell 17 people that they do not have a position with us. And also, more important than that, is to go to all the administrators and principals who run these programs in mid-June and say, you'd have to come up with a totally different plan. Most of them were on vacation to start with, to come up with another plan on how you're going to run your kindergarten, full-day kindergarten without pairs. So it was almost like it was forced upon us to decide. I think my view remains the same. When we do have the opportunity to plan way ahead, we should always try to avoid, and I underline try, because we might not always be successful, try to avoid using one-time funding for salaries, because you're going to have another problem. But I think in this case, now we know that the grant isn't there, but we have 1 year ahead of us to try to figure out, are we going to be able to secure other grant funding? And if not, we have a whole year to plan on how to do these programs differently. I think that's that's what really has changed in the equation.
And I would just add, the job is not finished. We totally agree with what you said, one-time purchases for the remaining funds from one fiscal year. So we need to, we're going to have to look at cost savings of $600,000 when we look at 2016-17 budget. So, no.
In addition to the
I'm sorry,
increases.
17-18. Yeah, in addition. So you're right.
It happens.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on Mr. Gignak's motion? Roll call on the motion.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Abstain.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 abstain, approved.
Next, we need a motion to increase the suspense account by $527,642 as a supplemental appropriation for the 2016-2017 school year. Motion by Mr. Gignac to do that as well, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Discussion on that? No discussion, roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Abstain.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 abstain, approved.
Next, we'll move on. The next item, item 15, is DESE notification of the Lowell High School disproportionate suspension rate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, sometimes in early June, I received a phone call from the district, from the commissioner's office. The state started tracking now more regularly the suspensions and the reason for what and all the data. And we were flagged as one of the schools, several schools across the state, but our high school was flagged as one of the schools that needed attention. And they requested to have a meeting, and I'm going to ask our assistant superintendent, had turned it over to her to follow it up and to brief us on what has been done and what will be done.
Thank you. This is provided to you just as a response to Ms. Martin's request at the July 20th meeting to have a copy of the letter. So that's what you have in front of you. And I believe I did allude to a phone conference that Mr. Martin and I had with the Director of Office of Learning Supports and Learning from the Mass DESE. That was on June 29th. It was a lengthy conversation around the actual discipline data and the professional learning network that we will participate as a district and as the high school in the coming year. Since it has been the summer months, we have not heard anything further from the state relative to the specific schedule for that, but I will keep you apprised of our progress as we go forward. The high school has already dived into the data and been looking very, very carefully at it. And as per a request by this committee, we'll be presenting to a subcommittee soon.
Any discussion, Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing the letter. I appreciate that. The actual nature of my question, though, was trying to get a better handle on what brought us to this point, what qualified us. Qualified may be euphemistic, but and how we sat when compared to the other gateway cities in terms of being included in this. As I looked through the letter, it does say that there is an attachment that describes how the discrepancy and disproportionality of those calculations were made. The attachment wasn't included in our packet. That may very easily answer my question. So I don't know if it's possible for the committee to get a copy of that.
I certainly will provide that to you. It is a very general, global attachment that doesn't specify, specifically the district. But what we do know is that it was relative to the disparity of suspension rates for one specific subgroup of students at Lowell High School. When we look at the other, and the questions that you're bringing forward will be part of the Lowell High School subcommittee when they bring forward all of the information that they provide on the data. So we certainly will have that for you, but my notes just indicated that you wanted a copy of the notification, so my apologies if I didn't provide more in-depth information for you. So when we do look at the other districts, there are some districts that were cited, their whole district cited. Some districts that had multiple schools cited plus the district. So in Lowell, it was Lowell High School with one particular subgroup, and we're looking very closely at that.
I think more than anything, and it can come back to us once you've begun your initial meetings, just to have a better sense of the context. How do we, what is our score compared to other like populations, just so that, looking at the information, I can see that certainly that there's an issue and we're going to work to address it, and that's, I think, very important. But I think knowing what our baseline is would be very important too. How we compare to other like districts who may be included in this and with the same subgroups in some cases and general population in others. But just so that we can understand where we fall in the continuum, I think would be very helpful for us. And again, if it's starting in September and that's when that information comes back to us, that's perfectly fine, but just to ensure that the committee does in fact get it.
So as soon as we resume with the state, we'll get you apprised of the information.
Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Durgan, do you know whether, what process the state took to come up with this statistic?
Yes, it's a very detailed, and I can provide that for you. They use a specific, analog kind of device that they actually track, and then they put together percentages. So it's very detailed when they looked at it. But when we looked at it, immediately when we received this, sat down with Mr. Martin and members of his team, we looked at it and pulled apart some of the specifics, and we were able to see that, in fact, that the suspension data has decreased over time for this particular subgroup. But we are definitely looking forward to engaging with the other districts that are going to be participating in this this professional learning, and we hope to be able to share some of our positive momentum and also to learn as we go forward.
Because I know how seriously they take suspensions, and they don't treat them lightly. I know they take very careful approach to it. So I think that because having just been there, I know how hard it is for them to deal with that issue, and I think they deal with it quite fairly. But personally, that's my personal opinion. So I hope that the school does come out looking better after this.
They are.
Any further discussion? Mr.
Yeah,
Hoey.
thank you, Mayor. I want to say Lowell High to me is a tremendous school. And I remember when I went there, I dropped out. Actually, I think I was thrown out, but Mrs. Keeley was very tough on me at that time. But I'm glad, and I wasn't surprised by this from the state. I wasn't surprised at all. There's at least, in my opinion, 500 to 600 kids down there that just, they're not going to go to college, and they need more vocational schools. We all know that. It's starting to come down from the federal government. They're all starting to admit they know not everybody's going to college. But in your report and research of this issue, because it's a big one, I believe we got to look at a few of our middle schools on it too before they get to a freshman. I've seen some incidents in the Sullivan School, the Robinson School. There was a few that I think we have to crack down on them before they get to the high school, because you're going to lose them. You got to get, I think Brian Martin at the high school and the staff, I can't believe we haven't had more trouble in that school. That's how great the staff has been doing at Lowell High. And I'm glad this issue come up, and I think the state's report is right on the money. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? If not, for now, we'll skip over item 16, go to item 17, facilities updates. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, and it is Rick, right? Yeah. We're having Mr. Rick Underwood give us a brief report on the facilities update. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, committee members, good evening. For the last 12 years, I've been a senior, because for 24 years I've worked at Sullivan School. For the last 12, 13 years, I was a senior custodian. And I worried every night about getting our school ready. Now I have the great pleasure of wearing about 29 of them. So, and I'm happy to say we're ready to start school. And when I say that on a custodial point of view. The schools are clean, they're ready. We have a couple that are a little behind due to summer school, CTI, rec programs. We'll be ready for the 29th, guaranteed. The things we'll still be looking at, there'll be some principals that we call and say, you know, we have air conditioning issues, we have some ventilation issues. So when I say we're ready, I'm not saying everything is perfect, but we have clean schools. The custodians have worked hard to get it ready. And I don't think a lot of people realize the work that goes into getting the school ready in 10 weeks. I mean, we have schools that have 40, 50 classrooms, and when you look at them, to pull everything out of those classrooms, wash the walls, wash the windows, wipe down the lights, strip the floors, get them done, it's a very daunting task. So I was very pleased. I've been walking around, visiting all the schools in the last couple of weeks, making sure everything was, you know, that we were going to be ready for school. And I'm happy to say we're ready to start school. And again, we have some issues that we'll be working through, HVAC, air conditioning units. And I'm sure you'll be getting phone calls from principals saying, no, we're not ready. But, you know, it's a huge task trying to get all these. And as soon as I got this position, one of the first things we did is I went through every single school. I climbed up on the roofs. I put a large list together of HVAC issues, AC issues, heating issues. We presented that to the DPW. They're working on it now. I don't think we'll get to them all. You know, it's a huge task, but we'll be ready for the 29th. And I'm very proud of the guys we have working for us, because it's a daunting task to walk into a classroom and to look at the amount of books and desks and chairs and just everything that's in there. Everything comes out, and everything gets cleaned. You know, when I first started this job 25 years ago, most of the schools had rugs. I mean, most of the classrooms had rugs in them. The difference between cleaning a rugged room in a VCT tile room is huge. I mean, you can vacuum a rug, you can move everything out and have that stuff back in the next day. VCT tile takes days to do. So I'm very happy and I'm very proud of the work these guys did. And I wish that before school starts, you as a committee or some of you as individuals will tour some of the buildings, because they really look fantastic. One of the other things I want to just touch bases on is one of the issues, and I get phone calls from parents, neighbors, school committee members here and there. We'll get an email on the grounds and grass thing. But what we try to do, and what I try to do, you know, in this position now, is I try to prioritize what we have to do. And I look at the grass as what's manageable. You know, it'd be nice to be able to drive by every school in 10 weeks and see them look like Mount Pleasant and Long Meadow. It doesn't happen. We don't have the staffing. We have the tools, but we don't have the staffing. So we try to prioritize that. And I only say that because I know there has been a couple of phone calls and emails on the grounds. But with so much work to do, with the numbers in the custodians being reduced, and the amount of work to do, I just want them to keep it manageable so that the last week of school, the last week of vacation, we're able to take these guys out of the buildings and get them to go in and do the things that they have to do as far as the grounds go. So I know it's a little frustrating as school committee members to get phone calls from neighbors and say, geez, that school, the grasses. But this grass is not manageable. This grass is manageable. It doesn't look good, but it's manageable. So all in all, we'll be ready to go. No doubt in my mind. Like I said, there's a few schools that are going to need a little bit more work. We're going to work with the custodians that had CTI and rec in their programs in summer schools, and we'll be ready. And they look good. And I welcome any of you to get in touch with me. I'd love to tour, take you on a tour of some of the buildings and show you some of the work that's being done. I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns that you might have concerning facilities.
Mr. Gignac, then Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Underwood, for presenting before us and getting the schools ready. I have a question for you, and maybe it's for the superintendent. But I recall that we used to have some plumbers on staff in the school department. Do we still have school department plumbers?
We're still funding 2 positions. We had presented to DPW some time ago. Gary and I met with, when Ralph Snow was still there, before Tom Bellegarde took over. We went in there, we met with them. We took that list that like I'd said, I'd visited all the schools. I climbed up on the roofs. We looked at everything real good. We presented that to DPW and Ralph Snow, and what was the question again?
Plumbers.
Oh, sorry. We determined at that time that we were funding 2 positions, but we only had 1 that was working. 1 had left for a different position. We thought it was necessary to take that second plumbing position and possibly have it changed over to an HVAC position. That's still in the works right now. So the answer to your question is yes, we're funding 2 positions. We only have 1 right now. It's my wish and Mr. Fisher's wish that we have that second position as an HVAC instead. That seems to be the biggest issues in the schools right now. If it's not HVAC or air conditioning, it's going to be heating pretty soon. And what ended up happening is you'll have all these issues with HVAC, air conditioning, really air conditionings during the summer, especially when we have 25, 40 days in over 90. That just makes it even worse. And by the time they never get to finish all those, and they jump right onto heating. Now those air conditioning units, they stay dormant all winter long, and as soon as the first hot day again, they start working AC, but now you've got even more to do. So we need to turn that plumbing position into an HVAC so we can address some of these air conditioning units and ventilation units and whatnot. So
Okay, thank you.
yes, we are still funding them.
Thank you.
Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Underwood, for coming down. I fully understand the enormity of the job and the amount of work that you guys have to do to keep these schools humming. That said, I'm personally unwilling to compromise on the grounds. I had a motion on a year ago asking the prior superintendent, I believe, to come up with a plan to take care of the grounds in the schools, and I got a note back saying it's up to the custodians to take care of the grounds. If you drive by a school and there's weeds that are 3 feet high and grass that's 1.5 feet high, what does that say about our school system? It's a relatively small task. As tasks go, cutting the grass and cutting the weeds is a relatively small task. I'm not saying it doesn't take time. I'm not saying it's not hard. But if the custodians don't have time to do it, then we as a district need to come up with a plan to take care of the grounds of our schools. People from out of town, they come by and they see grass in front of our schools that are 1.5 feet high. What do they think about a city that can't take care of the grounds of their schools? When these kids come to school on the first day and, the weeds are as high as they are, what do they think? It sends a message to them too. I think we got to come up with a plan. And if it means contracting outside, if it means hiring more people, whatever it is, we need to come up with a plan so that all of our schools, doesn't have to look like Long Meadow or Mount Pleasant, but the grass is cut and the weeds are cut and it's maintained well. So I would like to, at this point, redo my motion to ask the superintendent to come up with a plan to take care of the grounds of the schools.
If I just might add one more thing. Sometimes you're right. You started thinking outside of the box and come up with some new ideas. You know, we drive around the city and we look at these islands, and you'll see these signs that are taken care of by different landscapers and whatnot. And that's something I've been thinking about is, you know, possibly reaching out to the community, reaching out to the parents of some of the school. A lot of the parents have landscaping businesses, and that might be something we might want to do or look into it. I mean, I don't know how, you know, the logistics of putting advertising on our schools, but it's a possibility, but it's something we could think about. And, you know, maybe, you know, get some volunteer work or whatever, but you're right. I mean, it's a large task. Some of the schools have a lot of grass. Where I was at the Sullivan School, we have a massive amount of grass. The Riley School, some schools don't have as much. So it wouldn't take many volunteers or whatever to, you know, to help out, but it's something to think about anyway.
I mean, maybe that's part of the plan. Maybe it's a community effort, maybe it's donations, but we need to have a plan. We can't just say, you know, the AC works, who cares about the grass? So I would like to make that motion, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second on the motion? Second by Mr. Hoey. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Any further discussion on this item? Mr. Hoey.
I just wanted to speak to Rick here for a minute. Number one, on the city side, you gave Tom Belgard his job that he should have had a few years ago. One of the best we've ever had in the city. He's done more work for you. So over there, you've done a great job hiring him. But I think the lands and building department maybe needs to be looked at to get out there and maintain schools. I did a tour of the schools about a year ago, and they weren't in great shape. So I'm dying to tour them after seeing you have them for a while, because I know what you do on your own business, and I know what type of worker you are. And I guarantee you they're a lot better. But on the outside of some schools, like the Greenouch School, for instance, they have a lot of bricks, overhangs. You walk in, you can see all the mortar getting loose. And I'm just really concerned about that stuff, that it doesn't fall down, hit the kids. That's all I'm worried about. I don't know if you've seen that school.
I have, and one of the issues with that, and especially with the bricks, is we've had a lot of vandalism at that school. And the bricks, I mean, you don't think of vandalism, you don't think of bricks, but believe it or not, they're taking the bricks off there in large numbers. They've been breaking windows over there. Gary Frisch and myself did some creative financing at the end of the year with some money left over. And matter of fact, yesterday, they started putting cameras on that building at a large expense. But I mean, I think that'll go a long ways. It's not going to cut the grass. It's not going to take the, but it'll address some of those bricks that you're talking about that are falling down and whatnot. And like I said, you know, the vandalism at that school is taking a toll on it. So hopefully that will curb some of that stuff.
All right, thanks.
Any further discussion? Just as a point of information, if I could, there was an issue a few weeks ago with the HVAC over at the McAvenue School. Has that been resolved?
McAvenue, they've worked on it a couple of times. They've got it running for a couple of days. It broke back down again. Right now, it's operational. Yeah. What's going on with a lot of the schools is DPW will go in and they'll look at the units and it'll come up that it needs a charge. It needs Freon. So they'll put Freon on it. It'll work for a few days and it'll leak out, whether it's, you know, in the wall or in the unit and stuff. But the McAvenue was one of those schools where they charged the system up and a couple of days later, they found out that it was leaking, and they've been working on that since.
It sounds like it's working right now, but you don't have much faith that it'll be working in the next couple of weeks. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
if you're waiting for an HVAC guy to be hired,
Pardon me?
If you're waiting for an HVAC guy to be hired, who takes care of that stuff now? Who does those repairs?
DPW, lands and buildings. The school department doesn't do any of the maintenance on any of the building, and I think you're aware of that. We generate work tickets, and then it goes off to DPW. I mean, in the past, I know that Brian Curley and Jay they had funded some of those things, but I don't know where they got the money from yet. We don't have it in our budget right now to be fixing some of these, all of these HVAC units. We've paid for some of the overtime to have them go in and work on it, but it's a very daunting task, and they're not in great shape. And you know, one of the things we got to look at is we were lucky enough to build 14 brand new schools back in 91, 92. which was fantastic. But the flip side to that is we built them all in 3 years. So now we're going to have failures in major components all at the same time. And we're getting ready to build a new high school, which is, huge, like you said, massive program. But it's going to be hard to turn around at the same time in 7 years and ask for money from the state to start replacing some of these major components. And you've got a rubber roof on 14 schools. The life expectancy of those are 30 years. If we continue, same thing with the HVAC units, heating and ventilation units, they're all major components that all have a lifespan of about 30 years. We're approaching those now. So as a committee, through myself and whatnot, we really have to sit down and figure out how we're going to go forward. And we might have to take a proactive approach to start replacing things before they actually break, just for the fact that we know they're going to be breaking. And you don't want to end up with everything failing in the same couple of years. We won't have the money to fund them. So, it was great that we were able to build 14 schools, but they're all starting, they're at their life cycle now on many of the components.
Are you having HVAC problems in all, the McGavin is one of those newest schools that you're talking about. And so are you having HVAC problems or issues on many of those buildings?
We have HVAC problems in district-wide, all the schools. I know Jimmy Green will probably be sitting here cursing me right now for ringing it, but that's just a fact. I mean, we don't have the time, and I say it as a city, not as a school. We don't have the time, the money, or the manpower to address all the issues we have right now. I mean, it's just plain and simple. And I think there's a fine line between an excuse and a reason. I'm not going to give you excuses. I'm going to give you reasons. Our school's going to need some money, in the future. And a lot of it is in HVAC. If you tour around, and again, I'd welcome you to come through the schools. I'll take you personally and walk you through them. They look fantastic. But once you start going into the boiler rooms and the penthouse units, you'll see the difference. These things are major components that are the hearts of the school that they're going to need some attention. Probably more than DPW is going to be able to do in their normal budget. I think we're going to have to sit down and put into our capital plan. I know we just spent a couple of $1 million on windows and doors on many schools. They look great, but it doesn't keep them running. They look great, but their priorities and my priorities might have been a little bit different. So as we look at the 6801 accounts and 6802 accounts and the capital plans and the master plans going forward, I think those are things we should be looking at instead of the doors and the windows of these schools that we have.
The last thing, just on Mr. Gendron's motion, I think curb appeal matters. And so
Absolutely.
The place has to look good from the outside. It has to look good to the students. It has to look good to the parents, even from people that are traveling through the city that don't come from here. It's a reflection on the whole school district, how the buildings look. And if they don't look good, then that's a bad reflection. I happened to be at the Riley School today. The guy was cutting the grass. But there's also, in addition, so the grass will look good tomorrow, but there's a lot of debris there. And there's probably debris there all of the time, but there's a lot. And I don't, I'm not sure who goes and picks all that stuff up either. So,
It's the custodians. And again, I think that's one of the things that we have to start looking outside of the box of possibly getting park, because we have a park right there. So whose responsibility is it to clean those schools when a lot of that stuff is coming from the parks? We have the same, you go over at the Merkland School. The place, there's so much trash in the Merkland parking lot and around the school, and I hear it from the custodians. Rick, I went out and cleaned it up. We were out there yesterday. But a lot of that is from the housing. You've got the housing, especially during the summertime. These guys, the housing's parking in our parking lots, which I would too if I lived there. They're not being used. But a lot of that trash is from the, so again, maybe we can look at the housing, talk to the people in the housing, see if they can give us some help to get some of this stuff cleaned. It's their trash. We're not going to not pick it up because it's their trash, but we have to start looking at these things because as the buildings get harder and harder to maintain and budgets are getting tougher and tougher, we have to pull together our resources and look at different avenues of how we can get these things done. Parks Department, Housing Department, School Department, DPW, Parks Department. You know, Parks Department has the equipment. We might have the operational budget that we can, you know, co-mingle our stuff together. So again, you know, we just have to sit down and come up with some different plans.
You might try the sheriff's department and see, you know.
Sheriff's
they have-
Department?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because they have community work. We did have I know you mentioned ROTC. We've had ROTC at some of the schools, you know, in the fall to clean up leaves. They do a fantastic job. But those are some of the things that I'm talking about. We have to really start looking outside of the norm. The norm would be have the custodians clean everything, and we do the best we can. And I'll continue to, you know, require them to do that and ask them to do that and be out there and helping myself. But it gets harder and harder every year. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not making excuses for the way the schools look. I'm just, you know, at this particular, and then, you know, you also have different times of the year where you can't cut the grass. You know, one of the fastest growing seasons is right around MCAST. So for those 2 weeks during MCAST, you can't run the lawnmower. The teachers don't want to hear it. And if the Sullivan School is done with MCAST, the week after the Riley's doing it. So there are some reasons, they're not excuses, they're reasons, but when you drive by a school and you see the grass, you know, up tall, there might be a reason. Might be because they're not doing their job, and that's when I'll step in. But there are circumstances where there's a reason why it looks like that. Yeah, and especially now we're getting more and more testing all the time. You have the MCAS, you have the PAC testing, you have, you know, I don't even know all the abbreviations for all the testing they're doing now. But it's continuous, and it's something that affects the grass cutting. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further, Mr. Gendron?
Just one more comment, and Mr. Underwood, please don't take any of this personally.
No, not at all.
We think you're doing a great job. It's just an important role. I just wanted to mention that in the past we've had community service efforts at the schools themselves, and I know we need to be a little careful about that with kids picking up trash, but that we've done it in the past where we have the kids go out and pick up trash on the schoolyard, and that has the added benefit of you know, giving them the feeling that they need to contribute to the cleanliness in their own community, and it also gives them second thoughts when they're out in the park and they have a bottle. Should I throw it or should I put it in the barrel? So I think that's something that could be part of the plan, but we definitely need to look at this in a comprehensive manner.
Any further discussion? Mr.
Just one quick comment on that. I did an intensive tour of our schools, and I'd never let kids go outside at all. And the reason being is I've taken pictures of it too. Too many hypodermic needles, never mind just glass, around property. The city's just cleaned up the Lincoln School, which was pretty good. The area they cleaned, I seen a few of them there too. I just want to touch on the ACs, HVAC. One of your biggest issues is it's like a hot topper or a roofer. Some people don't care if they give you a 30-year roof. Like an AC guy doesn't want your air condition to last 30 years or he won't make money. He wants to go back in about 7. One of the biggest things you need to do to your ACs is just replace a filter, an air filter. And it has to be done like every 3 or 4 months, and then they'll last. So you might want to look into it to see if Lands and Building are replacing just filters, because that's one of the biggest issues that will bring a unit down, something that small.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get that HVAC technician working for us, really for preventative maintenance, cleaning coils, greasing motors and stuff like that. That goes a long way, and it also saves money.
Anything further? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is the proposed hiring policy. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this was as a result of a motion, and I'm going to ask Ms. Ann Sheehy, who worked with the motion, to present on this. Thank you.
This proposed policy was written as a result of discussion at a policy subcommittee meeting in July. It has 3 steps that I've outlined. The first step is that the Lowell Public Schools will establish school-based interview teams, train teams, and prepare teams to hold school-based interviews. And you can find more detail in the report. The second step is that we will institute an early hiring candidate pool. Utilizing the teams outlined in step 1, we'll be able to hopefully interview candidates earlier and develop a pool of candidates that are pre-vetted so that when postings become posted or positions become posted, we have a pool of candidates to draw from really quickly. And then the third step is Mr. Hoey's proposed policy requiring Lowell residents that are qualified and certified to receive interviews for positions for which they apply. Can I answer any questions for you?
Any discussion? Mr. Hoey.
I just want to thank you for the work you've done. And I basically brought this up because a lot of people call you thinking that's part of my job is to give them a job or get them a job. And I just wanted to make sure someone from Lowell got an interview so they get off my back about trying to get them a job, because it's not my job to hire people. So that's why I did it. Thank you for all the work you've done for me on this. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you. My only question, this certainly seems very targeted towards school-based positions. I'm sorry. How would it translate into a central office position?
The policy is really written for teaching and administrative and other positions. Some of the documentation that I provided does pertain to teaching positions because we know that it's really important that we're hiring teaching candidates early to get the best possible candidates. But it does apply to all positions.
So that for even the central positions, they'd still be getting an interview?
Yes.
Guaranteed?
Under this proposed policy, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, moving on, we'll go to, thank you. Good. Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the policy.
Okay. Motion to adopt the policy. Do we have a second to the motion? Mr. Gignac, discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Present?
6 yeas, 1 present, approved.
Thanks. All right, moving on to item 19, the personnel report. Mr. Superintendent. We have a motion approved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Discussion. Roll call. Number 19. Personnel report.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next, we have the list of eligible teachers. Mr. Superintendent.
Again, this is the customary list that we present, and look, if you have any questions, happy to answer them, or not, proceed for a request of motion to approve. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I respectfully request people that are speaking to speak closer to the microphones? Because I have my hearing aids on 11, and I'm having a real hard time hearing everyone. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
This list of eligible teachers, I think there are some people that have been on this list for some time. Has they been updated, or when was the last time they were updated? And is it really used?
Yes, this list is really used. We had this discussion the other day in the central office. So this was a result of a bill back in the 50s that had teachers placed on the list of eligible teachers based on their qualifications, certifications, and at that time, their test score on the National Teachers Exam. We don't have that exam anymore, but the list is still utilized in those other two areas. So you may see names that remain on the list because they are eligible to be hired in Lowell. However, they haven't received a position yet, so they stay on the list because they're continuing to interview in our schools.
Okay. Any further discussion? I know that there's at least one person on the list whose name has changed and whose address has changed so that they no longer live in Lowell, but they're down as a Lowell person. So they had to have been on the list for a long, long time.
Okay.
So do you ever glean the list to take out older names or names that aren't, people that maybe would no longer be interested?
If people are continuing to apply, they stay on the list, as long as they still meet the criteria to get on the list to begin with.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we've gone through most of the reports of the superintendent except for two. So the chair would entertain a motion to accept all of those reports and place them on file. A motion to that effect by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed. So voted now. We'll go to item 16, which is the purchase policy and procedures revision. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Mr. Frisch. We had started this. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you.
We had started this discussion with the previous committee when we had Mr. Antonelli, and then we suspended those discussions, waiting for a new CFO. And now that we have him, I had asked him to pick it up, and let's try to finalize it. Mr. Frisch.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The purchasing policy, as the superintendent mentioned, was presented previously by Frank Antonelli, interim assistant superintendent of business. The purpose was to bring the schools department purchasing policy in alignment with the city and state law. Pretty easy. There's attachments that are in your handouts, and there was one that was left off, and I put it at your place. And that was Purchasing Policy File DJ. And I'll talk about that one for the first one. This File DJ, or Purchasing Policy, is a broad, generic policy. Essentially, it is updated to include a title change from the Assistant Superintendent of Business to the title of School Business Administrator, which is the title I hold today, acting as your CFO. So that's the change on that one. DJE, which is the next one on the list, the bidding requirement is replaced with a new page that is in compliance with the state law and city. So that is a new page, and it encompasses essentially 3 categories under 10,000. Use purchase sound business practices, 10,000 to 34,999. Purchase using 3 quotes, either oral or written, and then over 35,000. Purchase using sealed bids or proposals advertised in a local newspaper and post on the purchasing bulletin board. So that is the changes. There's also a change for repairs and maintenance, and those are under Chapter 149. Again, under 10,000, use sound business practices. 10,000 to 25,000, use solicit written responses. And then request sealed bids for anything over 25,000. There was one thing, the memo also that I provided in your packet also talks about the permission to enter, which is not codified in the policies, but is part of an established past practice. This meeting, we had a permissions to enter, and it was approved. I recommend that this is for service contracts, the permission to enter. And I recommend that the service contracts align the same as purchase contracts and follow state law. Essentially, what that would mean is typically right now the past practice is anything above $5,000 that is a service contract comes before the school committee for approval. Essentially, service contracts, if you take the recommendation that I'm proposing, it would essentially mean that service contracts would come back to the school committee when they exceed $35,000, similar to purchases. So I leave it at that. You have my recommendation, and then open it up for questions, deliberations, and discussion.
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll get over the easy one first. So the purchasing policy labeled file DJ, which is just simply updating your title. I'll make a motion to approve that recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion approved. Do we have a second to the motion? Mr. Gendron. Discussion on the motion? Ms. Martin.
Recognizing that changing the title certainly isn't an issue, but I would just point out that where the authorization is recommended to move from preparing it to approving it, giving the school business officer the right to do it without, it's a matter of whether the school business officer has the ability to prepare for our review, or whether the school business officer can approve a requisition without it coming to us, if I'm reading that correctly. Where prepare is crossed out and approve is underlined.
Yeah, if I may add to that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. That would be approving requisitions without prior approval of the school committee. I added the word school, it's not in there, but committee when formal bidding procedures are not required. So that would mean anything under $35,000. So per the changes in the policy or procedures that align themselves with state law and city procurement practices. So yes, thank you for clarifying. Instead of the word prepare, it's approve.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Martin, for pointing that out. In that case, I would prefer to remain prepare. I was just listening to your language. I didn't even notice that. So I'll change my motion to approve the recommendations to change the titles only, but to leave prepare rather than approve.
You want to state the motion again?
Sure.
Please.
The motion is to accept the proposed policy change for purchasing in regards to changing the school business administrator title from assistant superintendent for business, but leave all other language.
Okay. Do we have a second? And Mr. Ho, you seconded the previous motion, so you have no problem with him withdrawing the previous motion? Okay. So you second this motion. All right, then this motion's on for discussion.
Thanks.
Any discussion on this motion? Can I just ask a point of information? So right now, the school committee is notified for everything over 5,000, and you're suggesting that there be notification if it's over 35,000, right?
No, in this particular policy doesn't address the permissions to enter. So this just talks about changing the titles and changing a word, prepare to approve. Now, the motion on the table is to keep the word prepare and also the other language other than the title change. But essentially, the practice is right now that if it's a purchase, this is to, let's distinguish between a purchase of goods and a service contract, okay? So a purchase of goods can, if it's not required to be bid, it can go for approval. If it's required to be bid, it needs to come before the school committee. If it's a service contract, then it falls under the permission to enter. So the question is, this aligns itself, the word approve aligns itself with current practice. So in other words, purchases for technology are exempt from the bidding statutes.
All right, my only question was, this motion doesn't limit it to
That's separate.
35,000. That's a separate thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on this motion, Mr. Gendron?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of detail in what we're talking about here. It seems to me that this would be best served if we sent it to a subcommittee. I don't know. I think I would say, why don't we send this to the Finance Subcommittee and have us review it in detail and get this all straightened out, because I'm a little confused as to what we're doing here, and so I would make the motion.
Substitute motion
Substitute
referred to
motion.
the Finance
We
Subcommittee?
refer this entire purchasing discussion, policy, procedure revisions to the Finance Subcommittee for review.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Second to that motion by Ms. Martin. Discussion on that motion. All in favor, all opposed, motion passes.
If I could just ask a question before it goes into subcommittee. Just to be clear, so the permission to enter we received this evening, which had one item on it for $40,000, which would adhere to your proposed policy change. Was that, will we be getting additional ones? Were there other ones that weren't included in that because of the anticipated change?
It did not. We did not change.
Okay, so nothing, it wasn't done in preparation for this?
Right.
Okay. Could we also, just when we get to subcommittee, have the information? I'd be curious to see, just a historical look, if we were to include 30B and 149 in our permission to enter and increase the numbers that would be in there, could you give me a sense of exactly what how many that would include?
On the
if we
service
included
contracts?
Consumables? Well, my understanding is service contracts are covered by 149. And that the consumables and like the paper purchases and those things were covered by 30B, which is why we didn't get information on them, and they adhered to that $35,000 bid process. My question is, if we held both to the same level and brought 30B into line with 149, as opposed to the opposite direction, which I think you're proposing, what would be the actual kind of paperwork involved in that? How many new permissions would we see? I'm just trying to anticipate what the
Yes.
numbers would look like should we make
Yes.
that choice instead of the other.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this? So we'll move on. To item 21, which is the last item under the superintendent's reports, which is home education. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Hoey. Discussion and roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes?
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. And before we leave this portion of the agenda, Mr. Superintendent, I just would like to ask the last school committee meeting, which was a month ago, there were 4 motions that were passed by the school committee asking for information from you and the Lowell High School administration, and none of those appeared on the agenda. Can you just give us an idea of when those will be addressed and appear on the school committee agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I remember one is the report on the graduation rates in comparison to similar districts and comparables. That will appear on the first meeting of September. The second one was in discussion to the STEM progress and what we're doing, particularly in the high school and generally K through 12, but particularly in the high school. That will also be on the first meeting of September. If you could remind me of the other 2, please. What are the other two?
There was one on the suspension and expulsion policy, and what corrective action was being taken at Lowell High School for that.
That's
Which
the
is a little
one-
different. What was on the agenda this evening, I think, was in response to Ms. Martin's request that you be given the policy, which is a little bit different than what are we going to do to make sure we don't get on the list the next time.
That one, as Mrs. Durkin explained earlier, is we're working with the states. We, by being qualified, as you quote unquote on that list, is we have to work with the state. We already had one meeting with them over the phone, and we will be working with them and looking at various things, and they have not gotten back to us yet. We have to really work with them, and we can't just go at it on our own. What we do know on our own is that we have, by looking at the numbers already, and the state was made aware of that the numbers that they were looking at were the previous year, because they always have 1 year lag. It's not FY16, it's FY15, the year that ended before. And we already know that those numbers that they have already dropped down. They've already been reduced for this year that we just finished. So we already know that we are doing much better. But having said that, we made them aware of it, but we still have to go exactly through a script that they work with all of the districts. So we will be reporting on that as we get more and more information with them.
Is that likely to be in September?
We really don't know with the state. I doubt it, because they haven't gotten back to us anything at this point. And I would like to be able to work with the state, because I don't know what they want from us. And we would like to satisfy them and satisfy as well the community by reporting back to the community what we're going to be doing.
Okay. I wasn't asking for the reports right now. I was just asking when we would have those reports. And the fourth report had to do with making sure that the curriculum at Lowell High School was going to be in sync with the new building. And I think that part of the presentation earlier was that there would be a visionary committee, which probably would address that, I guess. Mr. General, do you know about that? Is that?
I think that's part of what our Skanska is organizing with the high school and with those community groups.
Okay. But I guess I still would look forward to a report on that, Mr. Superintendent. Is that what
given that the deadline that was mentioned earlier by Mr. Gendron is May 31st, I would assume that they're going to have to do a lot of work before December, the end of December, in defining their curriculum to help the design stage. So I'm going to assume that we're going to have to come up with some sort of a report before December.
Okay. And Mr. Dakota, did you have anything else?
Yes, I'd like to clarify or bring up, I'm sure that some of you are aware that we had a visitation at the St. Louis school with the administration from the school with the hopes of possibly them freeing up one of their buildings that we could put to use almost immediately. We toured the building, and it was remarkable that it was practically move-in condition that we could use, and we've been talking over what would be the most advantageous use of the building, and we're talking about possibly taking care of special needs, and that would be a sizable savings for our district, so that would be a great plus. We're going to be pursuing getting more information from them. I'm going to be speaking to the priest who's in charge. The property is still owned by the Archdiocese, and I think they're looking at possibly leasing that building to us at this point. But it would certainly be a great shot in the arm for us, I think, at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? If not, we'll move on to new business. The first item number 22, is an update on the business office reorganization and district hiring. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the reorganization. Do we have a motion to approve? Okay. Mr. Dakota, we motion to approve. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Mr. Gendron. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is in regards to the Lowell High School clerk position and the facilities energy management position. I don't recall eliminating a house clerk in the budget process, and I know you and I talked about this offline, and it was a clerical position that was cut, but it was just misclassified in the budget document. Is that correct, Mr. Frisch?
Yes, that's correct. There were 4 clerk positions, and one of them was from the high school, which was the house clerk. And that was categorized under central administration.
Okay.
That, in fact, was, one of them was the house clerk from the high school.
Okay. Now, I believe all the houses need equal amount of support staff. So I support bringing the position back, even though it wasn't the intention of the committee to eliminate it. But rather than eliminating the energy management position to fill that role, I noticed on the front page of your memo, you're recommending to moving a contract employee to a network engineer, which would save the district $32,600. So my suggestion is using that and a little bit of money from somewhere else to fund that clerk position, because we're only talking about $8,000 difference there.
Correct.
So do you think that would work? Using the savings from the engineering position to fund the clerical position? Or did you have an idea for that money somewhere else?
The superintendent and I had brief discussions about using that money for some other purposes. We haven't solidified exactly what that would be. So that would reduce our flexibility. I'm fine with the with your motion. Yes, I'm fine. It's up to the superintendent.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification, Mr. Gignac.
Yeah.
What I would like to understand is what are you saying? Putting the money aside, where it comes from, because
Yeah.
obviously you realize savings by the reductions and you're going to spend by creating. Are you recommending that we do not reduce the position of energy management?
My personal opinion on that position in that funding is that if we're going to eliminate that position, that money should be used in facilities for some other role.
It's fine. I think.
And I think the HVAC is a great idea to use that money. We have a lot of issues with our facilities, and even if this position is felt that it's not necessary at this time, I think we could use that money in facilities rather than fund a position that we didn't necessarily know that we were cutting. Do you understand?
Yeah, no, I think what I would like to, if I may, I'd like to separate the two issues.
Yeah.
It's because it's not 1-for-1. We're not eliminating one to fund one. I don't want to present them that way.
That's how it's.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, I do.
Okay.
I do agree with you. But I think I'm trying to undo that right now.
Okay, yeah.
Is that we should be looking at
Sure.
what we want to remove. If we think that something is not necessary and it's not being efficient, then we should remove it. And as far as the savings that are realized, for instance, the saving will be coming back to you, to the school committee, to recommend to you what we want to do. And I truly agree with you that facilities is in desperate needs from what we've heard. So yes, we will take your recommendation to bring that back to you. But I'd like to consider these separately.
Sure.
And not 1-for-1.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to accept well, it's already been made, actually, but I don't want to eliminate this position until there's a plan.
Which one?
The energy
Facilities.
management position. Until there's a plan to use that money for something else.
And clarification within the facilities.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Within the facilities realm.
Okay, gotcha.
I know that the superintendent didn't want to mash them together, but that's how it's laid out here. It's cut one to fill another. That's how the report reads. So that's how I was trying to explain it.
May I ask if, I know it's not my role to make motions, but can I ask you to make a friendly motion to say, to include into this the condition that this money saved from this be restricted to strengthened facilities?
Absolutely, if
That would be
the maker of the
totally
motion.
acceptable with us.
Okay.
So is that an amendment?
Yeah, that's, if I can make that.
All right, what we're on is an update to the business office reorganization and district hiring, right?
Correct.
Okay. And do we have a motion to approve the reorganization?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's already been made, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all in favor of that, all opposed?
I think Mr. Gignac just offered an amendment to that motion.
All right, and your amendment is to,
Restrict the funding, the savings from eliminating the energy management position to solely stay within the facilities department and
Okay.
get a recommendation.
do we have a second to the amendment? By Mr. Gendron. All right, roll call on the amendment.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion as amended? Mr. Gignac?
Just want to clarify that the clerical position at the high school will be filled.
Correct.
And that you, okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the motion as amended. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. So looking at the comparison between the business office in our previous fiscal year and now the structure it'll have in our upcoming fiscal year, could you just do a quick FTE breakdown for me? So that's a one-to-one, no difference.
If I may, the only one that I see is the one that we just talked about right now, which is the energy management being -1 at this point.
So the assistant director was there before and is there now, correct?
No,
Which one are you talking about? I'm
The
sorry.
assistant business manager? Am I using the wrong title?
no, that's a additional position.
It was unfunded. It was never, it hadn't
So the
been funded for
position
a
that
while.
was held by Joanna, and now her last name's not going to come to me, I apologize. Okay, so she was grants manager,
Right.
so,
So there was no assistant business manager before.
okay. So is there a grants manager now?
Yes,
Okay, so those cancel each other out, they're the same.
there was one, we reduced one clerical position.
Okay. The addition of the auditor position, is that a replacement for a previously existing position?
That's a new position, but the payroll supervisor position is eliminated.
So again,
Same
it's a
person.
wash. Well, I'm
Wash.
trying to, if you
Yeah.
can tell me straight out that it's the same number of people last year as it is this year, we don't have to go position by
Yeah, it's the
position.
same bodies. Right, because the assistant business manager is new, but then there was one less clerk.
Okay, so that's the confirmation then, that there are no additional full-time equivalencies in the business office between last year and this year?
In the technology office, to be clear, there is an additional, there was one contractor now putting that person on staff.
With the requisite savings that we had seen in the, okay. Thank you very much. My only other question was around the professional development shifts that were happening. In terms of the outlay for that, does that represent a savings overall by going to these 3 stipends and the 1 salary as opposed to the single salary that was there before?
Yes.
Could you remind me what I'm sorry to be specific, but what the previous position was paid overall? I didn't have my budget book for Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah. It was in the neighborhood of 100,000.
Okay. So these combined, I mean, what's showing here is 37,000, and then the addition of the salary, would that bring it up into the $100,000 range, or will we see a savings there?
There was a teacher.
Right,
Teacher was going to be full-time.
right.
So her full-time salary is included, is added to this,
Right.
But we have savings from replacing her with a new teacher.
It's up. And
long-term
let me take this
Yeah.
one, please. The teacher who's going to be facilitating the LTA is a regular teacher will remain a teacher under the agreement, and will get this stipend of $7,511.
So she'll be in the classroom.
No, she will not be in the classroom. She'll be full-time. Let me explain that. And we do not have one salary for these. There were two positions, both of them grant funded. One was the Leadership Academy, which is and the other one was the Lowell Teachers Academy.
Right.
So there were two positions funded. One was in excess of 100, if I remember. I don't have the exact number. And the other one was in excess of 85,000. They were both grant funded. In this new plan that we have, the first one is that we're going to have the Leadership Academy taken care of by two principals, and these two principals will continue to be principals, and we'll take care, and we're envisioning a plan in the future of possibly a rotation among the principals, and that the Teacher Academy will have this one teacher, and then just a small stipend that's already in the contract. We're actually following the contract, and then
Still paying her salary.
Yes,
And she's not in the classroom, so she's being replaced in the classroom.
she's
so her
being
actual
replaced by
salary
a
costs go
long-term
against
sub.
this.
By a
That's my
long-term
only-
sub. And
So, because your two principals are remaining principals. They're
Right.
still doing that work, and they're getting a stipend on top of it. For your teacher position, that, the whole cost of that position needs to shift over to this. Even though she's being paid according to the contract, that's still an expense that should be charged against this grant funding,
it's
correct?
the new, well, what we're doing is we're charging the long-term sub that replaces this person, because this person needs to be replaced in the classroom. So the long-term sub who would replace this person would be charged against that.
Will be charged against the grant, even though they're not working on the grant?
Well, no, this person will be charged against the grant, but just for that amount that we require to. At the end of the day, we're looking at what we're saving from this, and whether we can do it within the grant, within that, I believe, if I'm trying to remember what the grant is that we're working with, so that allows us to do Title II. Okay.
So I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the costs this year are, as opposed to last year when we had whether one or two individuals being charged against it. So
Can I just
Will be
add,
lower.
clarification?
Sure.
So, just so everybody is clear, what we're talking about is grant funds,
Right.
not charged against the local budget.
That was my question when I was told that the substitute would be charged against the grant, recognizing that you can't charge someone to a grant who's not actually doing the work on the grant.
This person's salary.
This actual person should be charged to the grant.
Right.
Okay.
But I'm
Not the
trying-
substitute, the actual person who's doing the work, right?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
And it might make it easier when we
Representing the
actually get the
savings.
grant information. I mean, I know that
Yeah,
I
and-
requested that a
and
few months ago too, so maybe in
There
lieu of,
will be grant savings, but we'll provide that chart for you.
that would be awesome. That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Gendron?
Just very quickly, can you give me a 10-second update on where we stand with the hiring of a new technology director?
Yes, we will. We appointed immediately upon, because we didn't have much notice, we appointed Mr. Casey, who was, what's his last name?
Nelson.
Nelson, I'm sorry, Casey Nelson. Appointed him as the acting the leader of the team, the acting director, and I'm sitting down with them, and we're going to have a thorough look at where we're going to go. We have not yet opened the position or posted anything, and we're going to look at what we're going to do with that, and we'll get back to you.
Is that something you expect to have done relatively soon?
Yes.
Seems like
Yeah.
it's something that, it's an important role, and we don't want to let it fester.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next item is a vote to accept the grant award of $2,000 to the Dr. Ann Wang School. We have a motion to approve. Motion approved by Mr. Hoy, second by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
The next item is an expenditure transfer request. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion approved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gendron. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
The next item is a budget transfer. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion approved by Mr. Hoy, seconded by Mr. Gendron. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
That concludes the agenda for the open session, and so now we would need a vote to go into executive session and with the intent of adjourning from executive session. Do we have a motion to that effect by Mr. Gignac? Seconded by Mr. Gendron. Roll call.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Steve, you know,
Do we know where we're meeting? How are you, Ricky? Are we not in the? Oh, are we?
Money well spent.
Or even at the Robert School. You don't